Welcome, dear students of Job, to another study. We're going to look today at Job chapter 6. Finally, Job is replying to Eliphaz, the Temanite, and this is first reply of Job. And basically, the title in ESV is "My Complaint is Just." But let's look at the Hebrew text and try to analyze and look in more detail at what Job is saying. So notice how it starts, Vaya'an Yov Vayomar. Now I'm not going to translate this, everybody knows this. So I'm just going to go directly to verse 2. Lu Shakol Ishakel Kasi V'hayati B'mozanayim Isau Yachat. Actually, it's better Isu Yachat. But notice here, Mozanayim, the reason I read the Shiva under the Zion is because it follows along O, B'mozanayim. In any case, let's try to translate this sentence. So notice, of course, first of all, the translation by ESV. Usually I give you the ESV translation. It basically says, "Oh, that my vexation were weighed, and all my calamity laid in the balances." So, oh that, or notice dorm, which is a commentary that I appreciate very much. If only. If only. Basically refers to this particle lu. Lu, this particle is a particle that appears not very often in the Bible, but yeah, it usually has a translation, oh that, or if only. Let me just show you the occurrences of lu. We have lu here, and it appears in other cognate languages like Samaritan, Pentateuch, in other languages. Sometimes it's spelled like this. Notice sometimes it's spelled with an aleph, but not usually in the Bible. So here is the translation that we have here. Oh, that, if only. And notice we have Job here, a few passages in Genesis, maybe in the book of Ruth, and so on. But this is the translation of lu. Oh, that, if only. And with the then we have here Shakol Ishakel. Now this is just a reminder for you from Hebrew 1, from beginning Hebrew. Almost every time when you see the same verb root in a row, so notice this is the same verb root, Shin, Kof, Lamed. Almost always, 99% of the times, you're dealing with an infinitive absolute. And indeed, this is an infinitive absolute. And this is, of course, just an imperfect. And perhaps I should have left this in black. So it's an imperfect from the verb shakal, to weigh. So that's why I say, oh, that my, and this is my kaas, my vexation, or my grief is translated, and so on. And shakal, of course, we have the word shekel, so it's the verb to weigh. Oh, that my vexation, kaas, was weighed, or could be weighed, another translation. But please notice the use of kaas. Kaas appears fairly common. It's fairly common in the Bible, but usually it appears with the samek. Here it appears with the sin. It seems to be an alternative translation, alternative spelling. So I put it for you here. Kaas. Notice this may be the older, according to this dictionary. This is the older version, but later it's kaas. So of course we have it as vexation, and notice Job uses it quite a few times as meaning vexation. And what I wanted to show you about this word is important. The word actually appears quite a lot in the book of Kohelet or Ecclesiastes. Kohelet is also vexed. Sometimes kaas can mean also grief or the vexation of God. This is of course the vexation of man, but it can also be the vexation of God. But please notice, so this is kaas with the samek. So here is just the same, but it appears with the sin, like here, and this is where we have grief. So here, notice in Job 5:2, 6:2, and notice here, so it's basically used interchangeably, whether you use it with the sin or with the samek. So this is where we have all that my grief or my vexation. Job is very vexed. He's also grieved. All that it could be weighed. Hayati Moznaim. Moznaim simply appears also in Proverbs in balances. Isu Yachad. Basically, technically speaking, to be raised. And Yachad is interesting because Yachad is usually translated as together or united. But notice the usage of Yahad. Dorm recommends using it as an adverb also, or similarly, though most translations don't show that. Notice here, all my vexation overweight and all my calamity laid in the balances. They don't really translate this unless you translate it as all, kind of all here, all the translation of ESV. Then that would be all maybe referring to Yachad, but it's really together. It was put together, maybe the idea, but Dorm suggests to translate also. So notice how he translated, and my misfortune too placed in balances. So in other words, you weigh my vexation and my misfortune or calamity. Now notice here, of course, we have a problem. Is it misfortune or is it calamity? Of course, the words are not that different, but we're dealing with this verb haya. Haya with the pronominal suffixes e, hayati. Now, if you have your Hebrew Bible, and I hope you do, if you look, there is a textual problem here. The apparatus of BHS says, do not read haya, read hava, read hava. And then that brings us to this other word that I put it for you here, hava, actually, the first one. We have two havas actually, hava 1 and hava 2. Now hava 1 I think is more common. It appears like with the meaning of desire. It appears in Proverbs 10, or capriciousness appears in Proverbs 11. But most understand this to be hava 2. Notice here, haya. Actually, it tells us it's found in Job 2. That's exactly our text. And it says, look at haya hava 2. They don't give you a definition. They don't give you an explanation for haya because they think it's wrong. They think it's hava. Of course, this spelling, this understanding makes sense because in the ancient script, even in the new script, Yod and Vav could easily be confused. So it's possible there was a scribal confusion. So they refer us to this hava number 2, and here, if you notice, one of the meaning is given to us as destruction, but also notice here Job 6:2, havati. Read that. It's disaster. Disaster, havati. So that's a possible disaster or calamity. Actually, the meaning is not so much different. So then the translation would be like this: oh, then my vexation were weighed. But again, notice that we are not translating, nobody really translated this infinitive absolute. The infinitive absolute usually amplifies the sentence, but it's hard to translate that. Perhaps Dorm, oh, if only my grief could be weighed. Perhaps I would add here to my translation, oh, then my vexation was really weighed. I'll probably add it just to show the infinitive absolute. Oh, that my vexation was really weighed, and my misfortune or my calamity, placed, I would translate also placed in balances. So please notice, even though I supplied to you the ESV translation, it's always good to do your own translation, and here I would make it differently. So actually I'm going to write it for you right here. Oh, that my vexation, I like that, could really be weighed, and also my calamity, be placed in balances. That's how I translated. So I put here the CR translation. But as you do your work, it's highly recommendable that you come up with your own translation eventually, which takes into consideration your knowledge of Hebrew and your analysis of other commentaries. So here I put dorm. Now some of you work with Klein, some of you work with Seoul, some of you work with others. I strongly recommend in your notes you put also the translation of your commentary if it differs from ESV or others. And then if you can put your own translation, oh, then my vexation could really be weighed. And also my calamity be placed in balances. That's how I would translate it. Now if we move to the next verse, we notice of course that just trying to, okay, well, let's just move to the next verse. We notice, of course, that Job is beginning this speech with what seems to be a little bit of an excuse, kind of like saying, you know what, I'm in great pain, I'm in great vexation, I've gone through a terrible calamity, understand my speech. Notice what it says now, Ki ata mechol yamim ikabad. Ikbad. Al kain devrai lau. So again, Ki ata mechol yamim ikbad al kain devrai lau. For then, or for now, or for then, most translate for then, atake mean now or then. Chol means sand, more than sand, and chol yamim means the sand of the seas, more than the sand of the seas, ikbad. Now I'm looking at this verb kabad, and probably most of you remember the noun kavod, meaning glory, but don't forget the glory comes from a verb kibait, kabad, which means to be heavy, to be honorable. So here, of course, the meaning is to be heavy. Then it would be, so please notice this usage of the imperfect kind of hypothetical. Then it would be, the modal use. Then it would be heavy more than the sand of the sea. So basically my grief, my calamity, my disaster is heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore, al kain, therefore, familiarize yourself with this expression. Therefore, devrai, notice the pronominal suffix ending my words, lau. And here, of course, it's a word that most likely you have to look it up. I had to look it up. It's from the verb la'a with two ions. But again, it's disagreement. Notice here, have been rash or are rash, depends how you probably are rash or have been rash, probably have been rash. It's just a little bit translation because Job already spoke. And dorm, but notice dorm, my words are but stammered out. So we clearly have a problem here with that translation. I haven't looked at Seoul yet, but you might want to look. But notice la'a. So the translation is to stammer, but others say to speak carelessly. So, and I'm leaning in this direction. I'm leaning in this direction to speak carelessly. So here we can add again my translation, and or of course you can put your own translation. You can put Billa translation, or you can put the Vito translation, and so on. But notice again what we see here, and when you look up a word in a dictionary or in a lexicon, notice la'a, to speak briskly. So we see this of course are some cognate languages like Arabic, to chatter, or Ethiopian and Tigrian. Don't forget Ethiopic is a Semitic language. This is one particular dialect, the Tigrian. And apparently have a word which is cognate la'alea, to speak briskly. But this is sometimes helpful, but in this case for me it's more helpful to look at the Proverbs 20:25, and that's why I put it for you here. So if you look at Proverbs 20:25, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you here. So if you look at Proverbs 20:25, notice what we have here. Mokesh Adam Yala, Kodesh, V'achar Nadarim levaker. So, you know, mokesh, it's snare. It's a snare for a man. Da-da-da, kodesh. So here again, ESV says to say rashly it is holy, and to reflect only after making vows. And after achar nadarim, after vows, lebaker, literally to search, to search, to search, or to reflect. But here from this context, is the only other occurrence in the Old Testament. To me, this is clear. It means something as to speak rashly. To speak rashly, because he said Kodesh, he said holy, and then after the vows, you know, you're kind of thinking about what you said. So I think this is a better translation, to speak rashly. So I would translate it this: for then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore, my words have been rash. You know, my words have been rash. Actually, my CR translation in this case would agree with the ESV. My words have been rash. It would be heavier than the sea, and so on. So now we notice in Job that he's kind of a little bit of an excuse for his words, you know. So it's like, please understand me. I've just gone through a great calamity. You know, my grief is so great, my vexation is so great, so my words have been rash. I spoke kind of too fast. Even though there were 7 days, still, you know, you can see that he still spoke a little bit rashly. And now let's continue to verse 4. Ki chitzei Shaddai imadi asher chamatam shota uruchi biutei Eloah yarchuni. So we will stop here. So here is very simple. For chet is the arrow. For the arrows of Shaddai, Shaddai is one name to refer to God of the Almighty. Imadi usually means with me, but here most translate are in me. That makes sense because it's not like that the arrows of Shaddai are with Job, most like they are in Job. Now what is interesting is that almost nobody translates a share. So, and it's difficult to translate a share, and in all fairness here it's just a little bit unclear how to deal with the share here. I haven't found anybody who even discusses this. But perhaps we can say, for the arrows of the Almighty are in me, because, sometimes it's translated because my spirit, so here, if I were to put my translation, and I'm not just going to do it over in all of these for lack of time, but you might want to do it, because I would put something like I would add because, for the arrow of Almighty are in me, because, you know, I would just put it here, because, so I put it in parentheses, my spirit, ruchi, and here what we simply have in shoteh is just a verb to drink in a participle active participle, shotah, actually shotah, but it should be shoteh again. It's a little bit changed because of the pause. Shotah ruhi, my spirit drinks, and this is understood as poison. Their poison. Notice the suffix of pronominal suffix am. I cannot just put the a here with red. And we will come back to this word. But let's look at this word. Imadi, notice again, primary meanings at, besides with. But there is this particular possibility aggressively towards me in Psalm 59, and here referring to arrows in me. But this is really the only place I can think about where Imadi means in. However, context suggests that refers to the arrows of Almighty. And now Chema, I was a little bit confused about that word because usually it means anger or heat. It can mean heat here, but only in one case. But you can see the connection between heat and anger. But usually it means rage or wrath. Rage or wrath. This is the one that I'm used to, and it appears many times in Proverbs. Rage or wrath, God's wrath. It appears about 80 times about God's wrath. So, but notice here, most think it's poison or venom of animals, or of an arrow here. This is, of course, the passage that we're looking at. So the poison of an arrow, but again, we can also understood, it can be understood as the wrath of God, Chama. For, these arrows of God, which are in me, represent in a sense God's anger. My spirit drinks, but my spirit drinks their poison, and maybe also their wrath. So it's maybe a possibility to refer to both the poison of the arrows and the wrath of God that is in those arrows. And then it continues with a few, with this word again, very unusual, biutei Eloah yarchuni. The verb arach, it's kind of to be arrayed. So here most translations get to be arrayed. And it's usually understood against me. Against me. Of course, this knee. They are arrayed against me, it's understood. But notice biute, this is of course a difficult word again. So notice here the terrors of God, terrors, there's agreement, but the truth is that the word is extremely rare, and I will show you what this word is. So notice the word biut, and you have the plural here, terrors of God in Psalm 88 and Job 6:4. And possibly in Psalm 81:16, where there may be a scribal error. But let's look at that. So I wanted to look, when you have a case like this, biut. So notice this word biut, and it only appears 2 or 3 times. You want to look at all the occurrences because it gives you a better idea of what the word means, and probably you can even give it as an illustration in your teaching. So notice here in this case, we have here Psalm 88:17. I put it for you here. Alai avaru charonecha. So basically, over me passed your, or swept, but literally passed your wrath, charon. So it's in parallel with charon, again, wrath of God. And biutecha timatutuni. So, destroy me, what? Biutecha, your dreadful assaults is translated here, or your terrors. But here we notice that the connection of this word biut is again with the wrath of God. So it's interesting, it's again the wrath of God. The wrath of God again, it destroys me. So it's something that destroys the terrors of God. And I also put for you, this verse, which is questionable in Psalm 81:16. With Psalm 81:16, it says biutam, but we have only itam. Notice here, masanei Adonai. So the ones who hate the Lord basically cringe toward him, kachash toward him, vihi itam leolam, and their fate would last forever. Fate. But some people suggest it's not fate. I think it's misspelling. It's not itam. Probably the bet is dropped. And their terrors would be then, if you would be biutam. So see, they recommend read biutam, and their terrors. So those who hate the Lord would cringe toward him, and their fate, instead of their fate, would be their terrors. Terrors would last forever. Terrors, if of course we understand it as biut, instead of if we understand that the bet dropped. I'm not sure about this. If this is true, but it's an interesting suggestion. But this is for sure a parallel, and it shows us that the dreadful assaults or the terrors of God, who destroyed the psalmist, are in parallel with his wrath that sweeps over him. So that makes very good sense, because we see again here this poison of the arrow, or maybe even the wrath of the arrow that terrorizes. He's arrayed against Job. He's arrayed against Job like God's terrors. So this is what is happening, and we have to increase our speed here a little bit. So we move on to verse 5, and this is a little bit problematic, but not that problematic. So here notice the interrogative ha, and then hain hak pere alei deshe im ige shor al balilo. Here, of course, the problem is that you have a bunch of new words, and I didn't put this one. This is the wild donkey. This is the wild donkey. This, of course, the shore is the ox. But basically, this means to bray in most translations. So, would the, or does the, or we could put also would. Does the wild donkey bray alei deshe, basically near or when he has grass or green grass or fresh grass? And im here is not to be translated, just functions in parallel with the ha. It's also introduces a question mark. So this is just an interrogative. Many times it can be translated or if, but here it seems just to mark a question. Or does the oxen bray, low, the sound low over balilo, fodder. So most translate fodder. And I put for you here ga'a, to roar or to low, is the lowing of an oxen. Or balil, it appears in a few places as a mixed fodder, as a mash. It appears mostly in Job, as you can see. So this is what I call, this is a hapax legomeno, and this is what we'll notice again in Job. There are many hapax legomenos. So some words appear only in Job. They may appear a couple of times in Job, but they only appear in Job. So that's what makes Job so difficult to translate. And many times you have to look at cognate languages. You might have to look at Mishnaic Hebrew. You may even have to look at Akkadian, and where you might be able to find something similar, Balil. So again, Balil, a rare word. And then we continue to verse 6. Hayachel tafel מבלי מלח אם יש טעם בריר חלמות. Now the problem with this is that this is a very, very difficult verse. In fact, the next two are really, really difficult. Actually, they're not that difficult to translate, as they are difficult because they are not difficult in grammar. They are difficult because there are some words that we do not know what they mean. So basically, notice how his translation ESV, can that which is tasteless be eaten without salt? So mibli, again, this is a combination of min and bli, but it could be translated without salt. This is fairly clear. Mibli melach, Yam melach is the Dead Sea or the Sea of Salt. Melach is sea. Mibli melach is without salt, and this is also understandable. Can it be eaten? This is of course an imperfect from a kal, but it's a passive. Notice it's a nifal. So will it be eaten or can it be eaten? Again, if we translate can it be eaten, it's a modal. Can it be eaten without salt? What? Tafel. And what is that? Notice they're struggling. Tasteless. That is with tasteless, or others bland food. Can it be eaten without salt? Bland food, right? And dorm actually, I just put the second part because this is actually more questionable. But notice tafel, unsalted, insipid, dull, something that is dull. But please notice, actually, they don't know exactly how to translate it. The reason they get this translation is just from the context. Can you eat something without salt? So something must be something without taste, something insipid, something dull. There's another occurrence in Lamentation. See, so here notice Lamentation, but that seems to go in a different direction. So, and it's translated by some as whitewash. So maybe a completely different word, but doesn't seem to be that helpful to find out the meaning of tafel. So tafel, just from the context, most people believe it's something which is tasteless. So can somebody eat, or can that which is tasteless be eaten? Can you that which is tasteless be eaten without salt? And again, question mark, or, there's no or, but it's assumed, or can, or is their taste barir chalmut? So this is the question. Is their taste, tam is not questionable, tam is taste, or is there, again, this just marks the question. Is there yesh ta'am? Is there taste barir chalmut? And we have serious problem with both rear and chalmut. Rear could be the spittle, just based on some other occurrences. So we actually have rear appears in 1 Samuel 21:14. So, maybe mucus, mucus for what you spit. But then we have it in Job 6:6 plus chalmut, and there's some indication that is from the ox tongue, alkanet, and this of course brings us to chalmut. Notice again, very, very difficult to figure out what it is. So maybe Dorm says, is it the saliva of a healthy man? Ultimately, a lot of people go with the Aramaic translation and they think that it's to be translated the white of an egg. And notice here is the juice of the mallow. But again, there's uncertainty here, so we're going with the egg white. I think egg white is a strong. There's a strong argument to go for egg white, the white of a yolk of an egg, the white of an egg, which doesn't really have taste, as you know. And just based on the Aramaic parallel, that's the way you might want to go. So think about that as you prepare for this particular passage. But now notice, just to go a little bit further, and again to complicate the situation, again we have a Hebrew which is uncertain. Here, this particular lecture will be a little bit longer, even though I'm only covering 10 verses. But notice here, me'ana lingoa nafshi. So nafshi, we will say my soul, or it could be also my appetite here. My appetite makes more sense. Or, I refuse. Nafshi also can mean my soul or myself. I refuse. Ma'an is to refuse. So nafshi, my soul refuses, or I refuse. Li, introducing a infinitive construct, naga. Naga is to touch. So my soul refuses to touch it, to touch them. To touch them, it's kind of assumed. And to touch them, but it's not there. Mana lingoa. Here notice is the full spelling with the vav, but many times that vav doesn't appear, just the o appears. But here it's like a full spelling, lingoa. Don't be fooled by that. So literally my soul refuses to touch that food. Heima they kidvei lachmi. And this is extremely difficult to translate, but because we do not know what devei means. So that's why you notice here is the Hebrew is uncertain. And notice here, my appetite refuses to touch them. There is food that is loathsome to me. Food, of course, is lechem, which can be also bread. Notice the translation. I refuse to touch them. No major disagreement between these two. My appetite or I refuse to touch them is kind of the same idea. They are as food that is loathsome to me, or they are like contaminated food. So now since we have like here or as here, it's clearly that they understand this as the preposition ka and plus some word which starts with the va perhaps. Now unfortunately we have a serious problem translating this. There does seem to be another occurrence in Psalm 41, and I put it for you here. But here notice this question mark, kidvei, it says read, ka davav, ka davai, as of someone who is ill. Heima, and again when we have this cross, it's really a hapax. So it's a hapax, it's very difficult to translate. Some suggest why don't you read like? So translate this whole word translated like, They are like my bread, like my food. They are like my bread. In other words, kada. Read it like this. Read it as kadi. Read it as kadi. Kof dalet yod without the vav, and meaning it like ka. They are like my bread or my food. That's other suggestion. But again, this is very difficult. We look at Psalm 41:4, which seems to be this word which means illness due to menstruation. I'm not sure how they get that idea. It seems to me that it's some illness. Let's look at the passage. Adonai isadenu al eresh devai. See here, devai, fairly similar to this devai, but here you have devai. The Lord sustains him on eresh. This is bed, devai, on the bed of sickness, of illness. So it's translated on his sick bed. In his illness, here is in his illness. So we have in his illness, you restore him to full health. Kol mishkavo hafachta. In his illness, you restore him to full wealth. That's interesting. Where they get that full wealth, but you restore him in his illness. But from this word, it seems to have to do with something with some kind of an illness. So maybe then the translation would be, my appetite refuses to touch them, and they are as food that is loathsome to me, like contaminated food. Maybe like the food of a sick man, perhaps, might be better. I would go with that, even though I would probably, in my translation, I would just say, you know what, the Hebrew is uncertain here. But maybe I would put my translation like the food for a sick man, maybe. Like the food of a sick man, Again, not clear exactly what it means. But this is just a very difficult verse, so don't stress too much. And then in verse 8 and 9 continues this: Mi iten tavo shelati v'tikvati iten Eloah v'yoel Eloah vidakaeni yater yado vivatzaeni. Right, mi iten. Please familiarize yourself with this. It means something like all that. We find it in Psalm 14. Some of you who took Psalms, you know, all that, basically my request would come, literally, would come, in the sense they would come true. All that my request would come true, or all that my prayer shallah, it's really literally request, or all that my prayer might be realized, and literally God would give my hope. But perhaps better translate, God would fulfill my hope, or God would provide what I hope for. So probably God would provide my hope, what I hope for. Tikva with the pronominal suffix tikvati. And that God would give my hope, would give in the sense that would fulfill my hope. V'yoel Eloah vidak'eni yater yado vivatzaeni. And that it would please God to crush me, literally, and he would crush me. Yater, again, he would loose his hand, and cut me off. So again, notice this thought and desire for self-destruction from Job. Oh, that God would do that to me. And you have to look up some of these words, not in this verse, but especially here. Daka means to crush, but here is a word, a verb that you must look up. It's from ya'al. So I put it for you down here. Ya'al in the Hifil. It's basically to decide, to be prepared to, for Job, but but again, that he would decide to crush me. That he would decide, or here it says they would please God to crush me. It's a Hiphil. Or that God would decide and he would crush me. Yoel, the verb al, yater, again, yater. Here, yater looks like to me like again, it looks like we're dealing with the verb natar, and indeed looks again like a Hiphil, yater, imperfect, Hiphil imperfect from natar, that he would lose his hand, that he would lose his hand, in the sense that he would lose his hand or remove his hand or lose his hand, that he would lose his hand and cut me off. Here again, I have to look this verb up because it's a PL, and usually this appears in kal in the Proverbs, and it means something to gain by deceit. It seems something to batza. That means to make a profit. To make a profit, usually in a dishonest way. But notice in the PL, it means to cut off, and we have here Job, possibly also in 27 of to cut off. So the idea of cut off in batza. So then the meaning would be like this: oh, that if only my request would be granted. I would translate actually, if only my request would come true, something like that I would translate, and God would fulfill my hope. God would fulfill my hope, that he would decide and to crush me, and that he would stretch out his hand and cut me off. Again, this thought of self-destruction for Job with such great distress. And then it continues and finishes this section, and I will finish this section because it's a good break here. U'tehi od nechmati va asalda bechila lo yachmol ki lo kichatti imrei kadosh. And here most would be an agreement with the translation. This would be my comfort. This would be my comfort. So, or better yet, it would still bring me comfort. It would still bring me comfort. And I would leap for joy. I will leap for joy, or I would exult. Here is a difficult passage. I will give you some of the words that you need to understand. But notice the way it ends. Because I did not deny the words of the Holy One, the words Imrei Kadosh. So still, even though this is his comfort, this is Job's comfort, that he didn't deny the words of the Holy One. Here again, we are dealing with a few questionable words. The verb salad, chila usually understood of being pain or sickness, and chamol again is questionable, but I'm just going to put it from you here, salad. So notice what's happening here, brothers and sisters. As I mentioned, we have a lot of hapak to the government. It only appears here. So some recommend to jump for joy. We do have it in Mishneh Hebrew to salal. We have salal now. Become salal maybe. Salad, to jump for joy, maybe that's the meaning. Chila, notice labor pains, metaphorically pain, feminine of chil, so probably refers to pain. And then chamal, usually to have compassion, but here, lo chamal, probably meaning without compassion. So then the translation would be, it will still bring me comfort, and I will leap for joy even in pain without compassion. When most translate are relating pain, that I have not denied the words of the Holy One. As you can see, this phrase is just extremely difficult to translate based on the Hebrew. So I'm still not sure exactly how to translate. Notice Durham says, for I have not denied or concealed the ordinances, but I would go with, for I have not denied the word of the Holy One. But notice here the Greek reads, his will for suffering. So chil, the Greek reads, his wall for suffering. So it doesn't make much sense either. But this is what we have in verse 10. This portion, in my opinion, is unclear, but what is clear is that the comfort that Job gets is from this, that he did not deny the words of the Holy One. This is what brings him comfort. No matter what the pain, no matter what the grief, he did not deny the words of the Holy One. What exactly does that mean? This is something to think about as you ponder on chapter 6 in the book of Job. I'll see you with the next clip later.